Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
Escape is a love letter to a cult football classic. It is the definitive story of escape to victory. Delighted to say the man who has written all about this, because it is one of those movies that it is. Well, I cannot find the words, but luckily John can. John, good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Giles. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure's all mine. Right, for those who don't know, Escape to Victory is a hard-bitten war story with, Oscar-winning performances the whole way through and wonderful cameos from footballers who, therefore, should have won Oscars and were cruelly denied because of their acting chops. Am I correct?
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much bang on, yeah. Yeah, it's a much loved film. There's a lot of affection for this film, and I've tried to tap into that to give my sort of take on it and my relationship with it.
So first off, Escape to Victory tells the story of Allied prisoners of war playing a Nazi football team in the Second World War, and then the fact that the spoilers in the name, and then they escape afterwards. So first, is this a real story, or is it inspired by true events?
Inspired by true events is fair. There's sort of grains of truth in it. Certainly there was football that took place in prisoner of war camps over here and in German camps as well. There's a famous game or infamous game in Kiev that's sometimes called the Death Match that was between a local football team and a German team, Luftwaffe team. So there's sort of kernels of truth in it, but obviously by the time it makes it to the film, we're in fantasy land, really.
So whose idea was it then? And who was the producer? Who had the idea of let's make this film then, John?
So there had been a previous film, or two previous films, sort of vaguely based on that deathmatch idea, that certainly inspired a script for Escape to Victory, or what became Escape to Victory, by a guy called Jabo Jablonski. And this was a script that kind of jobbed around from the late 60s onwards until the mid 70s, went through various producers' hands until it arrives with a guy called Freddie Fields. Freddie Fields, big famous agent and Hollywood producer, and he kind of gives it the momentum to get it made. And I think the tipping point for getting it made is the fact that by that point Pele had been playing football in America for a couple of years, for 3 years, so he had made it more popular than it had ever been at that point. And I think prior to that you wouldn't have got a film about football made in Hollywood, but the fact that he's there, the fact that it's a bit popular, you can put Pele in it, you can put Sylvester Stallone in another sports movie, and suddenly you can get this film made.
And what, is it 78, 79? What year does it start filming?
They made it in the summer of 1980, and it came out in the summer of, July 81 in America, September 81 over here.
Yeah. So how does Sylvester Stallone get involved with it? Because he's got, he's done Rocky. Has he done First Blood yet? Has he done Rambo First Blood yet?
No.
Right.
So at that point, he's at a slightly awkward time in his career, because he's had a smash hit with Rocky. Obviously, that's blown big. And then he's made a few films since, but the only other hit really is Rocky 2 at that point. And he's had 2 or 3 other flops at that point. So I can see the appeal of him sort of running to another sports film, and I can see the appeal of producers putting him in another sports film. And so he arrives at Escape to Victory sort of 5 years. But while he's on the set of Escape to Victory, he's writing Rocky 3. So then he comes out of there, does Rocky 3 and then First Blood, and then goes on to become, the 80s action star, along with Schwarzenegger, obviously.
And obviously there's the tricky balance of how are you going to, because it's always difficult making sports films, because sometimes it can look false. So it's either you get actors to play footballers, or you get footballers to play actors. And I suppose one of the things is, how do they decide? I mean, you got Pele on board, so presumably he just phones his mates and says, "Do you want to get involved?" And that's why we see. Well, we got an A list, and then I won't say a B list, but we've got some players who you'd have to be the player's player to sort of understand why they're in the movie.
Yeah, I don't think that's unkind at all. Obviously, Pele's the top line star, and then Bobby Moore comes along with him. Bobby Moore and Pele were great friends. Bobby Moore then clearly has a think of who do I want to spend the summer with, and gives his friend Mike Summerby, who's not long retired, gives him a call, so he gets involved, and then this process begins of as you say, they clearly made a decision at some point to make the football a bit more authentic by getting footballers involved rather than employing actors and trying to get them to recreate football scenarios, which would have been disastrous, and I don't think we'd be sat here talking about it now. So then this process begins of trying to find other footballers. There's a guy called Peter Mason, who's a football consultant, and he's trying. There was a deliberate move to try and get players from several different countries so that there would be an audience for those players in those countries. So you end up with like Paul van Himst from Belgium and Halvard Torresson from Norway, Soren Lindstedt from Denmark, and then all the Ipswich lads as well. They sort of struck the motherload.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously Ipswich in the 70s, late 70s, are a big team. You know, they're winning stuff. They've got wonderful players, and of all nationalities. So yeah, how did they hit the mothership with Ipswich then?
Well, I think this Peter Mason guy had some sort of existing relationship with Bobby Robson, but also, as you say, they were a bigger team then. It seems a bit incongruous now that Ipswich were involved. No disrespect to Ipswich, they're still a good club and a big club, but at the time, they were in the top 3, 4, 5 teams in the country. Certainly, they'd not long won the FA Cup. A year they're in Europe. A year later, they'd go on to win the UEFA Cup. So they've got a good high profile, and Bobby Robson allows Peter Mason to visit the club. He comes in after training, literally just lays out the project, says we're making this film in Budapest. We'll be 6 to 8 weeks. Who fancies coming and playing a bit of football and being an extra? Pele's in it. And understandably, I think 7 of them put their hands up. So you get John Walk, Russell Osman, Kevin Beattie, Kevin O'Callaghan, Robin Turner, Laurie Civil, and I'm forgetting one. Unforgivably, I'm forgetting. Yes,
it'll come to you in 5 minutes. Don't worry. I just love because obviously this is a different age, obviously, and in today's sort of Premier League, can you imagine? I mean, even if you've got a squad of 150, good morning, Chelsea. There's no way that a Premier League that a coach would say, yeah, take 7 players, and some of them, like Walk, the rock upon which sort of midfield defence is. Yeah, go off to Hungary with Bobby Moore for 6 weeks. What could possibly go wrong?
Exactly. I think somebody said to me that I'm, in the stuff that I write about, I seem to be attracted to sort of the idiosyncrasies of the past in football, and I think that's true. And I think it's true with this. What I'm fascinated with this film is that I don't think you could make it, or certainly couldn't make it in the same way now, because yes, you might get that Pele equivalent as a top line, but finding those Ipswich players who A, would be available, B, for whom the extra bit of money would make a difference to them, and C, whose club would allow them to go, a coach would allow them to go, and D, would be insured to go and kick a ball around old army boots on a sandy pitch for 2 months. I just don't see that it would ever happen. And
also, this is Hungary in the early 80s, so it's not exactly. I mean, I know they're not they're not doing it in Moscow, but it's still at that time. It's still the Hungary that we know and love, and 1,000 stag trips to Budapest every weekend. So was there a trepidation to going over there as well?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, from the filmmaker's point of view, I think there were a lot of financial benefits from making it in Hungary. They built a camp just outside the city, and obviously the stadium was a big draw. MTK's stadium that they play the final game in still didn't have floodlights, and some location manager who had scouted it deemed that it looked most like the Paris stadium that it's supposed to be. So there were those advantages, but yes, certainly they felt that pinch that it was behind the Iron Curtain. Ozzy Ardiles talked about them getting per diems for being on set each day, and it kind of being a struggle to spend it because everything was so cheap, from top to bottom, whether they were going out for a meal. A couple of the actors were going to the opera and found that the opera was £2 to get in or equivalent. And so it was certainly an alien environment for them all.
I'm just thinking, because Bobby Moore likes to carouse, and there's a couple of carousers in there, so it must have been quite a job to sort of keep a. Was it quite a job? Were they taking this seriously? I mean, okay, when you're playing football, and you got Pele, I suppose you will be, but there must have been some, shall we say, hijinks that they had to be reined in, John, or were they all very good boys in Hungary in the early 80s?
There was certainly a lot of drinking. Certainly a lot of drinking. One or two of the guys who were younger then said they'd never seen drinking like it. They'd never seen anybody put a gin and tonic away like Bobby Moore could. But it all seems kind of, nobody disgraces themselves. It all seems really, really lovely, really convivial, really everybody got on. This thing kept coming up that the footballers were interested in the actors were interested in the footballers. And, they would go on set. Obviously, they're making the film, but in breaks, they're kicking a ball around with Pele during the day. In the evening, Michael Caine's taking everybody out to a restaurant, and they're all sat around in a restaurant, whether that's, in pockets of 3 or 4, or sometimes all of them would go out. There was a lovely story that came up that there was one night that the election fell on a day that they were filming, and it was decreed by the government, although obviously there wasn't a lot of choice in a Hungarian election in 1980, but it was decreed that places couldn't sell alcohol. Nowhere could sell alcohol for the day, and it didn't stop them because they went out for a meal, and Michael Caine managed to wear these cargo pants with various pockets in, and every pocket seemed to have a different spirit in it that he sort of quietly clinked into the restaurant, managed to get his legs under the table, and then passed all these bottles round while the waiters were stood watching them getting quietly drunk without ever selling them a drink.
Here's the thing, because you've got Bobby Moore, legend. You've got Michael Caine. This is all very boys, very East End. And then you've got Pele, who is, God in human form of football film. And then you've got Sly, Sylvester Stallone, who is presumably he's the Hollywood star. Did he, did everybody muck in? Did he want a different trailer? I mean, I've heard a story. This is the one thing that maybe I know about this film. I've seen it, obviously, as a small boy, as you probably did. That one time Sly thought he was quite good as a goalkeeper, and he challenged Pele for, what was it, a couple of penalty shots, thinking that he could save at least one of them. And obviously, we know how that panned out. Is that a true story?
That is a true story. He certainly came into it thinking it was going to be easier than it turned out to be. And at one point, he did. He was happy to stand there and challenge Pele to penalties, saying that he would definitely save 1 out of 10. And he ended up with a broken finger, and obviously didn't save any. But to his and as for the mucking in, there's various reports. Certainly, he was a big Hollywood star. He did have 1 or 2 ego problems at the time, which he admits to, and he did keep himself to himself a little bit. So some of the players weren't so keen on him, but others speak really well of him. Paul Cooper was on set as his stand-in and his goalkeeping coach. Paul Cooper's the Ipswich player I forgot earlier, by the way.
Ah, right, there we go. Told you to remember it in 5 minutes, yeah.
He was on set with him, and he speaks very highly of him, says they got on really well. Mike Summerby said he was great. Ozzy Ardiles said he was great. And I think he maybe just found it slightly intimidating because obviously everybody else could play football. So between takes, they're all kicking a ball around, and if you're not familiar with the game, then I can see why you wouldn't want to put yourself in a game of piggy in the middle where you're never going to touch the ball. And then, and like I say, he was writing as well. He was writing Rocky 3, so he would take himself off and do his writing. But when he did get together with everybody, people speak well of him. And I also think it's to his credit that he, on the physical side of it, he did muck in and he did try and do as much as possible. Like I say, Paul Cooper was there as his body double, but he found that he wasn't doing much because Sylvester Stallone was keen to try everything. Obviously, he's very physical, and he ended up getting more hurt on this than he got hurt on Rocky, I think.
Because he plays the goalkeeper, that's the reason he's in, and he's put in as a goalkeeper. I'm just remembering, because Michael Caine the team manager or the captain? I'm trying to remember.
He's the captain.
Yeah, because some of them, bless them, aren't exactly in the best physical shape. Summerby, I think, is a little bit, carrying a few pounds overweight, I think we can say.
But you can say that.
How was the actual? I mean, did it finish on time? Did they get out of Dodge on time on schedule? Because obviously this is back in the day. This is before they got digital, so they've got to do the rushes. It's all shot on film. Kids, ask your parents. Presumably they didn't overrun on budget. They got back in time, and it was just a case of editing it.
They did overrun slightly. They did overrun slightly, and then it hit an actor's strike. So there was a period where Michael Caine and Sylvester Stallone had to go home and then come back. So they overran a little bit, and there were changes as they were going. There were changes in the script. For instance, the ending, I think a lot of people know, or certainly it's rumoured that the original ending had Sylvester Stallone scoring the winning goal.
Right.
Despite being a goalkeeper, he runs in the novel of the film, which I go into quite a lot in the book because I found it really interesting. So, that's the bones of what was the original script. And in that hatch, Sylvester Stallone's character runs upfield and scores the winning goal before the escape. And the footballers arrived and saw that and said, yeah, don't think that's going to work. So there was a bit of flexibility there, and they changed that. And then when they realised the best way to shoot the football, they brought in an extra specialist crew who had filmed all the FIFA World Cup films. 66 and through the 70s, and those guys came in and shot the football separate to the guys who had been shooting the drama.
Okay, that makes sense then. Because I was going to say, because I'm a motor racing nut, and one of my favourite motor racing films is Le Mans, because it's got great footage. But as a piece of, if you can't go, oh my goodness, the Ferrari 512. If you're not a petrol head, it's like, and so where's the drama? Whereas, it's got a cult classic feel to it, and we'll come on to this now, but the actual football scenes are actually, it's well shot. It's not shot as a director would, as a theatre director would shoot it. So, it's up close, and you get to see Pele, and you get to see, the stars doing their thing.
Yeah, that's right. So the original plan was, Freddie Fields hired a guy called Robert Ryger, who was from ABC's Wired World of Sports, and he came in, so because Freddie Fields didn't know enough, he hired a sports director. The sports director had directed any number of sports, but football, soccer was not amongst them. So he arrived with the best intentions, with like a dossier full of shots of, we'll do this and we'll do this, and orchestrated moments. And then again, the footballers, Pele, Bobby Moore, Mike Summerby, Werner Roth, who plays the German captain, those guys urged them not to do that. And they kind of said, obviously there's things you need, there's set pieces in it, there's penalties, there's Pele's overhead kick. But by and large, if you tell us vaguely what you want and film us for 5-10 minutes at a time, you'll get what you want. And it's those elements that make it look better than any other football film, I think.
Here's the thing, the ending. Because I always think perhaps it kind of just drops off very quickly. I mean, 1 minute they are winning, and the next minute they're being smuggled out by a bunch of, and the extras don't look as if they're from the 40s. There's some very long hair and some interesting fashion senses.
Yes, there's some lovely memories of how they filmed that. So yes, how the film ends. I mean, I assume we're amongst friends and everybody well aware of this 45-year-old film. But so they equalise, and then Stallone saves a penalty, and then there's a pitch invasion with the French crowd come running on and start putting clothes on the Allies players and sort of smuggling them out the gate, and they rush the gate. And they're out into the streets of Paris, and that's where we leave it. The film comes to a close there. But the filming of that was interesting because obviously you don't want to be filming that too many times. People coming charging on the pitch. One or two of the players said it was a bit dangerous, and there were different stories about what motivated the people to do it. Because the first time they did it, they kind of fired a starting pistol, and nobody came on because they weren't sure that they were allowed to do it. So they needed to be encouraged. Somebody said, how can we motivate these people? Somebody told a story that they would offer them all tickets to Disneyland, for like a certain number of tickets to Disneyland for people.
Disneyland in the States. It's not Disneyland Paris, because Disneyland Paris doesn't exist at this point. Yeah, exactly.
So then somebody quite rightly pointed out that was no good to them, as they couldn't leave the country. So it was like, okay, well, what would be good to them? And they said, well, electrical goods and jeans and clothes and like that. Okay. So then According to some sources, there's then this truck outside the gates that's got electrical appliances on and and like a van full of jeans and denim and clothes and stuff like that. So they spy this starting pistol, and it's like the first people that get to that van, help yourself. So they all charge onto the pitch. They all sweep these players up. Obviously, they're shooting the close-ups of the people that need to put the clothes on the players. But that rush of players and that rush to the gate of people, as you say, in the odd one or two in Adidas tracksuits and trainers and clothes not of the 40s. They're storming the gate to get out to this van full of goodies.
Storm the ground, get a toaster. Unbelievable. What was the? Yeah, sorry.
You've had a good day. How was your day? Yeah, I saw Pele score an overhead kick and got a deep fat fryer.
So, I mean, did it set the box office alight? Because it's become a cult classic. So I'm thinking that, I remember it's a Christmas movie. I mean, I remember watching it as you probably did as a small boy. It came on TV because we were going to go to the cinema at that point. Or did you see it in the cinema? I'm just thinking, or has it gained its status as things like Shawshank have, for example, by small TV viewings, as it were?
Definitely, that's definitely the case. So I first came to it as one of the first things we got out of the video shop. I remember us getting a VHS player, and it was one of the first things we got out of the video shop. But then the first time it's on TV is Christmas '84, and it remains that now. You'll see it on bank holidays, but always at Christmas. I think Channel 5 have got it now. Certainly, the last few years they've shown it every Christmas. And it's become a favourite like that. In terms of the box office,
did it wash its face, as the saying goes?
Yeah, it's interesting. So in America, it's regarded as a flop. It didn't make the dent that they wanted to. The football wasn't as popular as they thought it was going to be, despite Pele. But in Europe, it did well enough. It made its money over here. So Michael Caine regards it as a success. Sylvester Stallone regards it as a flop. The footballers over here in Europe say that people talk about it all the time to them. Werner Roth, the American footballer who, like I say, plays a German captain, said it rarely comes up. People rarely speak to him. So it's got this kind of dual existence where if it's fair to say it flopped in America, but it did well enough elsewhere that you could regard it as a success.
But you see, if you're a small boy in the 70s in England as I am, and you grow up with, I don't know, Commando and Warrior and all those, for you, Fritz the War is Over comics, and then you're watching, stuff like we say, if you've got your first VHS, love it, and you've gone to your video shop. It's, it builds into that narrative. And of course, it's got Bobby Moore and that sort of generation before us, but our dads are talking about it all the time. And it's got Pele. I mean, what's not to love? And I suppose that gives it a building. And as we get older, of course, we're looking back on that nostalgia with our own nostalgia.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the top line for this film would be, if you were selling it to somebody, would be, it's the great escape of football. And, what's not to love about that? I mean, we certainly grew up, in an era when war films were very common, very popular. And but then for this one to land that's got Pele in it and Bobby Moore and
Michael Caine, I mean, for goodness sake.
Yeah, and obviously that's come to me over the years as well. When I first watched it as a kid in the 80s there, I wouldn't claim to have known who all these footballers were. I knew who Pele and Bobby Moore was and Ozzy Ardiles, and that might have been it the first time I saw it. But then you uncover layers and layers and layers and different nuggets. I mean, even into writing the book. So Halvard Torresson, the Norwegian player, I hadn't appreciated that he was the captain and scored the winning goal on that famous game when Norway beat England with the commentator with the your boys
Margaret Thatcher, Winston Churchill, that one.
Exactly,
yeah.
Lord Beaverbrook. And so Halvard Torresson is that. So all these players have sort of got their place as well in the history of the game.
So really if we draw like a tree of European football connections, it's all going to come back to the mother node, which is Escape to Victory. John, is that what you're saying? That is basically the bedrock of all European football from the 70s onwards.
Quite possibly, yes. Yeah.
And as a book itself, as a personal observation, because you can't write a book like this without having, A, it being great fun, but B, it is a cult classic. It's part of being of that era. And I'm grinning because I'm talking about this. So it must be great to A, get the stories, but B, have a reflection on, because this wouldn't happen now. You couldn't do this now. Lionel Messi is, it doesn't work like that. So is it a look at, an age which we've lost, etc., and what it means?
Yeah, a little bit. So it's a combination. So it's very much like, I was keen to get a love letter into the title there because it really is that. I mean, you can look at this film, and I know a lot of people look at this film sort of ironically, but there's not a shred of irony with it. I just love it. Just unashamedly love this film. So what I've tried to do is write about. So the opening chapter is sort of how I came to it, like we discussed the video shop and those early viewings. But then it sort of interweaves my take on the film. We work through the film alongside how it came together. The origin stories that we talked about, how it went through Hollywood and came into being, how they cast the actors, how they cast the players. What they got up to in Hungary, the book of the film, the impact of the film since, sort of how it's fallen in and out of fashion over time since as well. So it's hopefully it's all encompassing.
And of course that kit, which I think is one of the best football kits that's ever been. I mean, it's a superb kit, isn't it?
It's an incredible kit. Yeah, I was keen to get that into the design of the book as well. It's sort of instantly recognisable. Those the single red and blue stripe down one side. It's a lovely kit. Indeed it is.
The book is called Escape, a love letter to a cult football classic, just in time for Christmas. Listen, if you go to the Talk Radio Europe bookshop, you will see a photograph of the team with a German guard dog as well. If you click on that, it'll be winging its way to you by a well-known distribution service. John, if people want to get in contact with you and talk all about, Aussie Idealist, tactical playing, I take the ball and I go this, there, and score, boss. You see, I'm remembering stuff even now. John, where are you on the socials? Is there a website? Where can people find you?
So I'm being called John Smith. It's tricky to get a handle with that in. So I am at very popular name on X and Instagram and everywhere, Blue Sky and Threads, all of them at very popular name.
Genius. The book is called Escape, a love letter to a cult football classic. I'm so glad that Sylvester Stallone is true, by the way, because I was just wanted to check that with you. That's still listeners, go to Talk Radio Europe bookshop and it'll be winging its way to you. John, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. Cheers.